Hey everyone and welcome back. So today it's an absolute pleasure to tell you guys that we're going to be dissecting one of my favourite YouTubers. We're going to be responding to the last bastion of good, truthful journalism, The Quartering. So for anyone who doesn't know, The Quartering is a news channel. He releases videos very frequently and the vast majority of them are incredibly inconcise, super long, super rambly and don't get to the point in a reasonable time ever. It just doesn't happen. So you may be wondering, Devin, why is this guy your favourite YouTuber if he makes super long, inconcise, rambly videos? Well, humble viewer, the answer is very simple. It's because basically anything he says, you can believe the opposite of, and you'll be correct. It's an excellent way to learn about things and have a rough reading of what's happening in the news. In all seriousness though, I do think his takes are generally pretty terrible. Not only that, but he has a tendency to report on every single possible outrage, slightly left-leaning or progressive type person, regardless of how big the story actually is. And more importantly, he very often reports things with multiple inaccuracies or just presents one particular side of the story without giving any reason as to why. But honestly, most of this will just become very apparent if we get into the video, so let's get started.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And guess what? Game journalists are lying again.
Well, I gotta say, that's actually a pretty strong claim. I'm sure he has a ton of super strong evidence to support his claim. Are you seriously spoiling the video now?
That's, of course, the primary reason I call them game urinalists and not journalists. If you're not from the United States, a urinal is something that is in a men's room that you relieve yourself into.
Thanks, I really appreciate you explaining the 9,000 IQ joke. It would have completely gone over my head had you not done this, so you know what? I appreciate it.
And that's why where I would put most game journalism articles in the toilet, because ultimately they are clickbait, rage bait.
Yeah, I can't think of a single other news source who does that, actually.
Haha, clickbait, go.
Wait, hold on. Biggest SJW blowout in history? Now this I gotta see.
Your money or your life.
Oh god, I took too much acid again.
Or anti-gamer, and rarely foundationally
every time I read about it, I get reminded that it's still several
Crunch,
months
for
out.
example, is
Two months
another
out.
here
Now,
nor there.
and I just want to get here.
One of the few platforms you're not getting right. Basically, the only article who writes anything right away.
For the love of God, please just get to the point. I'm dying here, man. But this is a clear demonstration of what I mean when I say he's incredibly inconcise, long, and rambly. I'm just going to skip ahead so we can get straight to the actual content of this video, but we're 3 minutes deep in a 14-minute video and he hasn't said anything of substance.
So, about a month ago, good old Jason Schreier, who really only writes about crunch these days anymore, and
Alexa, stop. In Yorkshire, the
Fact police
are going after a big deal.
No talking.
So this section may seem pretty innocuous to anyone listening in, but honestly I think this is a great demonstration of precisely how The Quartering bends the truth just slightly to fit what he's trying to say. So all I've done is Google Jason Schreier and click on his Bloomberg page to see recent articles he's written, and as you can see, there's clearly a large variety of topics within games journalism that he's covering here. It's not just crunch. In my opinion, I think there's two possibilities here in terms of what's going on. Firstly, The Quartering could potentially just not hear about any of the articles Jason's written and only hears about him when he's talking about crunch specifically, or secondly, The Quartering is slightly insidiously lying here to discredit anything Jason has to say about crunch. And to be super clear, regardless of which it is, he is still wrong. This is just an incorrect statement. Just a quick FYI, by the way, I was trying to edit this down so that I could address his main points, but this guy just rambles for fucking ages, so we may skip a lot of the video. I'd encourage you to go and watch the full video so that you know I'm not cutting out any context, but sincerely, this is just a really dull ramble.
so Schreier writes this article on and on and on, which is essentially just a tiny group of unsatisfied people. Then that gets picked up by Kotaku, and even yesterday on the day after, Cyberpunk 2077 devs break promise, will force employees to work 6 days a week. Force employees 6 days a week. Remember that title, force employees to work 6 days a week. Except that's a lie. Well, the reality is Cyberpunk employees, CD Projekt Red employees voted They had the option to extend the game another 6 weeks or work 6 days a week to get the game done. They overwhelmingly voted in favor of finishing the game.
So now we've reached my main issue with his video. Basically, what's going to happen from this point out is he's going to trust one source over another to get his information on this. But realistically, ultimately what I'm going to say is that there is no possible way that he could know that the information he's getting is actually accurate here. This whole thing about the vote seems completely unsubstantiated as far as I can tell. But before we continue on with this video, and no, don't worry, I'm not trying to sell you a VPN, just chill, is fine. I just quickly want to say that I'm not here trying to make people feel bad for buying Cyberpunk as a result of potential crunch. Ultimately, my job is to just show you why I think the quartering is worthy of criticism and show you that ultimately, regardless of which side of the fence you fall on this one, his reporting is very much inadequate, and this is an issue amongst all of the YouTube news cycle.
At so many major studios that it feels like fans have normalized the concept. Well, no, it's just, look, we all have to work overtime.
Oh, I just want my video game. We all have to work overtime, guys. You have 1 million subs on YouTube. You do not have to work overtime if you don't want to, you slimy, lying fuck.
You know how many of my viewers have to work 80 hours a week sometimes? Like, it's just, why are these people who sit in air-conditioned offices with ping pong tables and arcade games and you know, all the free Red Bull? I'm sorry, but a lot of people that view my videos that are custodians, or they work in construction, or they're masons working in a 100-degree sun, or roofers, they just don't care. That's the reality. That's the blind spot that a lot of these elitist journalists have.
So in this clip, I think it's pretty obvious what he's trying to do. He's trying to play down how bad the CD Projekt Red devs potentially have it so that he can feel better about buying a video game and so that he can own the libs and all of that.
Now, in a recent YouTube video recounting Bloomberg's reporting, many of the comments make comparisons to other worse conditions, or they'll note that if mandatory overtime is paid, then it can't be that bad. What a cruel world, one comment reads, being employed during a lockdown where thousands of people are being fired every minute and being paid extra hours at the office. I agree.
So I feel like this should be pretty self-evident, but just because you're being paid for overtime doesn't necessarily make it ethical.
Mandating crunch after promising not to is simply not a good look, and sustained crunch should not be normalized as necessary to make games. Well, the thing is, again, they voted to work this overtime.
Jeremy is just going to keep repeating this point about how they voted for crunch, so fuck it, let's cut this bullshit-ass, long-ass video and cut to the evidence. Let's go see what his bulletproof logic and reasoning is for why all these journalists are definitely lying and in cahoots with each other. Let's go.
What if I told you in a video evidence exists from an actual reporter from Game Informer who talked to the CD Projekt Red employees?
So let me get this straight. Your evidence to debunk the game journalist is another game journalist. One is lying and one is telling the truth. And you definitely know which one it is. Incredible. So naturally, of course, I hunted down and watched this video, and yep, it's a games journalist. She interviewed about a dozen devs supposedly working at CD Projekt Red and said that apparently there was a vote to decide on whether the game should be delayed or whether they should go into crunch over the course of 6 weeks to push the game out. Now, as far as I can tell, there's no way to prove that either journalist is telling the truth. However, what I will say is that interestingly, Jason Schreier actually talked about this in his Twitter thread, and interestingly, what he had to say on the matter is that he was told no vote was ever distributed down to the developers. This was an upper management decision. But of course, with Jeremy being the absolute hack that he is, he hasn't included this in the video.
This was a case of absolute thirst for clickbait. You can see CDPR developer on recent crunch report. Some people want us to be bad for their narrative.
This section will be really short, but basically he addresses this article in which a CD Projekt Red dev came forward and said that the company isn't bad. I've looked at the article. There's 2 devs that supposedly come forward, but only one of them is named. The one that's named you can find on LinkedIn, and he's a lead technical designer, so hardly like a random employee at the company who's low down and would be affected by this, firstly. And secondly, interestingly, he doesn't actually speak to the thing that Jeremy is talking about in this video regarding the vote. He doesn't confirm a vote happened. He doesn't even mention a vote. All he says in this article is that crunch isn't as black and white as some people make it out to be. Okay, so I'm gonna basically ignore the rest of the video because nothing of value is said beyond this point. He goes through a couple different Twitter threads and just roasts Jason for seemingly very little reason, to be honest. And again, this is precisely why I don't like The Quartering. His videos are incredibly long and rambly and talk about the same things over and over and over again. But what I will say is in regards to Cyberpunk and CD Projekt Red. First things first, it does seem like the developers are at least compensated for their overtime, but at the same time, considering they said they would never go into crunch, I think this seems a little bit shady personally. And I think more importantly, it's bad to normalize these types of work habits. Ultimately, I think it's better for people if we have a certain number of hours capped in a week. Also, I'd like to say that ultimately, if there was a vote and people did vote in favour of the overtime, there's definitely going to be at least a few people there who didn't want to go into overtime. And it's highly possible that they felt some pressure to do the overtime regardless. But ultimately, like I said, the point of this video isn't so much to talk about crunch and more so just to illustrate that the quartering really shouldn't be trusted. You can clearly see he's just taking one opinion over the other, completely cherry picking whatever he wants to believe so he can feel good about whatever purchases he has to make. And with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching and make sure to like, comment or subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. Also, I'll leave a bunch of links in the description box if you're interested in other things I do. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.